Hello and welcome to today's video. So for today's video I was trying to come up with an idea of something to do. Originally I wanted to do something from Toy Story. I wanted to, get that video out right before the new movie came out. And I just wasn't feeling it. I knew it would be something that would take a little more time. I wasn't for sure exactly what to do, and I just couldn't come up with an idea I was happy with. So then I thought, I'm just going to make something original, some original creation, some monster. And so I was looking over the colors I had, and I try to keep some of each color in my inventory, but some of them get lower than others. And I don't even realize it. I'm like, I just used a bunch of this to make blobs. And so I'm like looking at what I've got, and I had quite a bit of gray granite by Primo, and it's kind of a gray with a bunch of speckles in it, and it works really well for doing like castles and other rock type creations. So I thought it would be fun to do a rock monster, but I didn't want to just do a rock monster. And I've done some rock monsters before. And so I decided I would do a sad rock monster. Alright, so let's get started on that sad rock monster. To start things off, I'm going to take some foil and shape it into kind of an odd-shaped ball to use for the main rock for the body of my rock monster. And then I just soften up some gray granite clay by Primo and put that around it. And then I use my ball tool to add some texture. I didn't want it completely smooth with my hand, so I just thought that those would add some edges. And then I took another piece of foil and rolled it up into a ball and covered it for the head. I did use a wire to connect the two pieces. This does a couple things. It makes it a little more stable, but it also pokes a hole in that clay that's covering the foil, so it'll let air out, and so when you cook it, it doesn't have like an air bubble trapped in there. And then I'll go ahead and just texture that, and then I did make some smaller ones. Lots of times when I'm doing the legs and arms of things, I don't fill them with foil first, I just use clay. But for this, I wanted to do several different rocks. So on those extra rocks that I made, I went ahead and started with a foil base on those and cover that with the gray granite clay. Now I was trying to decide if I wanted to use 2 rocks for the legs or just 1 rock. So he looked too tall with using the 2. And so I just did 1. And then I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do the foot and the toes. So I thought I would just have it sticking out of the bottom of the rock there, and that didn't look right. So I went ahead and scrapped that idea and decided to make a couple more rocks, but make them flatter, with the foil base, and then cover those with the gray granite clay and use those for the feet. And this gave it a lot better look. And what's a lot of fun about this guy is I don't want his feet to be the same. I don't want his legs to be the same. I don't want his fingers to be the same. So it's made it a lot more enjoyable to make this piece without having to worry about things being symmetrical. In fact, I purposely made them different sizes because if it was a monster made up of rocks, the rocks wouldn't all be the same size. And since I went ahead and did his legs as, 1 rock and the foot as another rock, I followed the same formula for his arms, where I used 1 rock for the main part of the arms and a smaller rock for his hands. Now, since his hands or his arms are more sticking out, you'll see here I did use some wire to attach them at the shoulders and then to attach those hands. And again, that'll help so that the way there's no air trapped in there when it's baking, but it'll also give it a little bit more support when it's baking, so it'll keep those arms in position. And then I just went ahead and took some gray granite clay, softened it up, and made some different size ones to use for his thumb and his fingers on each hand. Now, one thing I would recommend when doing this is to use a little bit of liquid sculpting to kind of glue those in place, because I did have some issue with those coming off. Now I'm going to go ahead and sculpt the details for the face. So for his mouth and jaw area, I want him to be sad. So I did kind of droop that down. And then I used the ball tool to make the eye sockets. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of the gray granite with the white to make, to give him that kind of rock look to his eyes too. But I did want them to be a lot lighter than the rest of the rock area on his head, compared to the gray granite. Now, originally I started these out and they were kind of these balls, but I didn't want them to stick out past his face. So lots of times I'll make monsters and have these big, kind of bug eyes on them. But for this guy, I wanted them to be more even. And that way I could add these little eyelids to him and make them a separate piece. And that way they would cover better. But it really helps to give that sad look. If you start in the center with the eyelids at the top and then work your way down as you go out, kind of have that angle. And it's pretty easy because if you'd reverse that and have it down in the center and up on the outside, he looks angry. And it's a very simple way to add emotions to your sculpture. Now I did the same thing with the brown. I mixed it with some gray granite and I'm going to use that for his pupils. And so I just got some, a little bit of clay into 2 small balls. And then I used the ball tool to add an indentation so that way those were even with the rest of his eyes. And then I added the wire and poked a hole and then attached that to his body and add a little bit more texture. Now I'll go ahead and make his toes. So I just rolled up some gray granite clay like I did for his fingers and attached those with making the big toe quite a bit bigger. Then I'll just add a little bit of texture over his body. And he's pretty much done. The last thing I wanted to do was mix up some different color rocks using the brown, the white, and the gray granite. And I just did several different ones here. And then attached them in different areas of his body. Some of them in some of the creases. Added a couple to the top of his head. And then I did kind of a grouping in his on his back. So I thought that just made it a little more interesting, added a little more character to him. Another thing I might do with another rock monster is add some maybe moss or something, especially around his feet. I thought that would look cool, if it looked like he even had been sitting for a long time and started growing moss. I figure rock monsters are probably one of those creatures, I think of it as like a sloth, or they would be slow moving and maybe, sit a lot or even sleep a lot and, maybe even months at a time. I don't know. I'm just kind of coming up with this whole scenario for these different, creatures. All right. So I'm just kind of going over him, making sure everything's staying put. Make sure the texture looks good. I'll go ahead and add his belly button and then a little bit of a monster butt crack in the back there, and he'll be ready for the oven. Now it's time to bake our clay. Remember, always bake your clay according to package instructions. And here is the finished sad rock monster. So first thing I want to do is bring him in close to the camera because I wanted to show you guys some of the little rocks that I made on him. They were kind of hard to see in the sculpting portion of the video. So I just wanted to zoom in on the camera, or get him close to the camera and kind of focus on those so you can kind of see that detail and see that awesome speckled look of that gray granite clay by Primo. I just think that stuff is, really good for doing, works really well for doing like castles and other rock structures or little rock monsters. And you can see his belly button there. I did do some cracks around it. And then I did some cracks on his mouth. Just kind of add a little more detail to him. You can see his little toesies, his fingers. Then on the back, I did give him a little monster butt. I like to do that. If you're familiar with my work, a lot of my little monsters have a butt, unless of course they end up having a tail. So, and you can kind of see Had that gray granite mixed with that white to give him kind of a speckled look in his eyes too. And I mixed it with the brown, but it's not quite as noticeable. You notice like a couple little pieces in there. But like I said at the beginning of the video, this isn't what I was planning on making for today's video. But after I got him done, I was really happy with him. So I'm, really happy I went with my gut on this and not what I thought would be something that would be more appealing to, a mass audience. My channel's still pretty small, but I want it to grow, but I also want it to be stuff that I want to do. So hopefully, if I have a good blend between pop culture and original creations, you guys will appreciate both of those. And so far you have, so I greatly appreciate that. But I did want to mention, I am really happy with how this guy turned out. And if you're an artist yourself, that's not always the case with your work. So when something turns out even better than what you anticipated, it's a really rewarding feeling. But I want you to know, not everything of mine I'm happy with. And I don't always share stuff with you guys that doesn't turn out. Unless I'm making a video and I've got a deadline, I give myself a deadline to get that video done. Sometimes I'm not 100% happy with it, but when I put it out there, other people like it, and you just don't know, other people's tastes are different than yours, and that's what's great, is something you might not be happy with, other people really like. So always give your artwork a chance and, put it out there for other people, because even if it's something you don't like, they might be really happy with it. All right, enough of me rambling on. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and remember, never stop creating. Bye.